Okay, so thank you for being here. I've organised my thoughts on this brief, Why I Meditate, under three headings. So firstly and briefly, what circumstances brought me to meditation? Some of these might be familiar to you. Secondly, a few words on the kinds of meditation practice I do, really just to provide a context for my practice. Thirdly, why I continue to practice, which is perhaps the most interesting thing to consider, how meditation has positively impacted my life. So what brought me to meditation? For a long time, I had been ordinarily unhappy. No major health-related issues. Life was apparently okay. I'd achieved the milestones my family and my culture set for me. I was successful in school and university. I had a meaningful partnership with another human being, albeit my second go at that. I had children and work that made me feel I was contributing to something bigger than myself, to society, and to individuals' well-being. And my work also gave me freedom to explore ideas and read. And I had somewhere safe and pleasant to live. I didn't have any fear on that count. So although I had many blessings to count, I was struggling with my roles and responsibilities, working full-time, looking after children in a modern, blended family, and possibly still grieving for losses that I'd experienced. I think I was quite isolated and rather bewildered by where I found myself. So some of us can have a how did I get to this point in life moment and be shocked to realise that we've sleepwalked really into our present circumstances. And that's how I felt. So alongside some more or less difficult emotions and negative states of mind, I also had this desire to be more content and to be kinder, to improve some strained family and work relationships, and to be a human being who created less havoc in their life. So all of this sounds like self-improvement, doesn't it? And it may have been, but it was also me looking for some solid ground to stand on, because things felt very shaky. I'd lived long enough by this point to notice that I repeated certain patterns of behaviour and had habitual, very unhelpful ways of responding to feelings of discontent or loneliness. And these habitual responses caused significant suffering to other people, as well as to me. I was busy. I was never without a book, that respectable excuse for not noticing life. And I realise now that when I felt an uncomfortable emotion just beneath the surface, I'd turn away from it by doing something, whether it was reading, throwing myself into work, driving somewhere, shopping, spending money, drinking a glass or more of wine, and later, with the advent of social media, which mercifully didn't exist when I was young, I would get lost in Facebook or Twitter, the internet. We all have our favourite distractions, and I'm sure you know yours. I'd just like to acknowledge that I lived and still live a comfortable and a very privileged life. I had all the reasons to be happy and grateful, but I was deeply discontented. I didn't feel alive. Sometimes I was in a state that I came to label as sitting on the sofa, pretending not to be there. Once labelled, once recognised, this state became something that I felt I could change. I think for me at that time, I had to be able to look at what was a very sad, very passive, self-effacing, escapist mode of being without judgment towards myself. Well, I had to be able to forgive myself for that, what seemed like a waste. And I had to be able to give myself compassion and kindness. So that was all necessary before it changed or could be changed. Sitting on the sofa, pretending not to be there, was not even a mode as active as dwelling in happy memories or fantasizing about the future. fantasizing about being somewhere else or doing something else. It seemed an empty state of being, and I usually dropped into it when resting, sitting on the sofa by myself after some household or occupational responsibility had been completed. It was the state of being I habitually returned to when I wasn't busy or in a role, and when no one needed me. I appeared to function fine in relation to others at home and at work, but alone I felt rather empty, and it was a different story. It was also a wake-up call, and I heard it. So luckily, I have a wise friend, or several wise friends, and one of these suggested I go to a retreat centre that's very close to where I live. And so that's where I was taught the first basics of meditating. And that was 5 years ago now. Since then, I started going to a small and a local Buddhist centre near where I live. I manage to meditate when things are going well. I'd say 5 or 6 out of 7 mornings a week. I meditate in the mornings. Sometimes my meditation practice slips, and I really notice when it does. My days flow less smoothly. I face challenges with less confidence and patience, and I'm more preoccupied and get things out of proportion when my meditation practice slips. I enjoy meditating with others, and my most powerful sits have been on in-person retreats with a group of people all together. It seems to me somehow that the collective energy of all those who've gathered and practiced together remains in that space, and I am kind of, in a sense, the beneficiary of all that energy, all that love, really. So, moving on, I still practice the first 2 meditations I was taught the most regularly. So those are my go-to meditation practices. And they are the mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana, or the development of loving kindness. Both of these foster and keep alive in me an attitude of reverent curiosity. That's a phrase that's used by a Mohawk woman, a seed keeper and a farmer called Rowan White. I experience reverent curiosity as a state of being alert, appreciative, and without any grasping or any desire to hold on to the state I'm in. So both mindfulness and metta bhavana bring that into being for me. Mindfulness of breathing grounds my body, stills my mind. I can feel my thoughts have been hijacked sometimes by an external drama or a random irrational thought. Mindfulness of breathing offers me an anchor or a hold fast when I need it. So those are 2 formal on the cushion meditations, but there's also another specific practice which I can recall if I'm caught up in some sudden distress, if my thoughts are multiplying, and that is one of Thich Nhat Hanh's meditations, the 4 Pebble meditation, and you can listen to it on SoundCloud. It's about 20 minutes. For me, it's a shortcut to a calm state of mind and a coming back to the here and now. So the 4 Pebble meditation, I'll describe briefly. It leads us through a process of visualization, bringing to mind 4 qualities that are conducive to peaceful contentment, as they're represented by 4 things from the material world. So you have these 4 pebbles as reminders, and the first pebble represents a flower. We can bring a flower into our mind's eye, whichever flower we particularly like, and this symbolizes freshness, energy, and vibrancy. So we, and those that we share our lives with, benefit from our feeling fresh. Without access to experiences that replenish us and fill our hearts with joy, we may lose that quality of freshness, that quality of vibrancy. So the first pebble in our image, the first pebble in our image of the flower connects us to our freshness, and it's a quality that we need in order to achieve peaceful contentment. With the second pebble, we visualize a mountain, rooted strong and steadfast. Holding the second pebble in our hand and bringing a mountain to mind, we can connect with the quality of stability, which is also necessary for happiness. The third pebble represents the surface of a calm lake, and the water is perfectly still, and it reflects the sky and all that surrounds it without any distortion. Through the pebble in our hand and the picture in our mind, we may be able to come into contact with the still lake within us. We may be able to become peaceful and content. Holding the final pebble, we can bring to mind the bright moon in the wide, open night sky. Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to imagine the moon shining and clear, with plenty of room around her. Spaciousness is the quality that's evoked by this, and it's a quality that might fill us as we visualize the moon and all that sky around us. So I responded really deeply to this mindful meditation. I think it's really intended for children, but if ever I'm struggling to sleep, I bring the practice to mind. And if I'm beginning to feel anxious or my thoughts are running away in a proliferation of speculations and stories, I also sometimes remember to bring this to mind. And I sometimes carry 4 pebbles in my coat pocket or my cardigan pocket with me as well, as reminders. So there are periods when I've included in my daily practice, though not all at the same time, the contemplation of impermanence, so reflecting on the transitoriness of life. I might also have included a gratitude practice and a forgiveness practice. So those 3 are other meditation practices that I have turned to in addition to the 2 that I've just mentioned. So to conclude with why I continue to practice, because it works for me. Here are some benefits I've noticed. I can feel more fully alive, gain a sense of perspective on my stresses and strains. It's a way of coming to recognize my habitual patterns of thinking and responding, and it can allow me to work with negative or excessively euphoric and excitable and exhausting states of mind. So one of my teachers said, and I don't know if she was quoting somebody else, but she said, what you do with your mind can turn the light on a little. And I really love that observation, that idea that what we do with our mind, if we do it with diligence, if we do it with sound intention, that can turn the light on a little, that it can make a difference. So meditating, I'm reminded that I have a choice. Meditation helps me explore sides of myself I don't yet know, and perhaps am reluctant to recognize because they don't sit well with my self-image. I notice, as I've mentioned, that daily life and meditation are linked. Meditation can affect my daily life positively, just as daily life can affect my meditation. Taking time to sit in a culture that rewards busyness and productivity can be a radical act. Sometimes you just have to stand still. Meditation doesn't just benefit me, it benefits people around me. They notice if I'm seeming calm or less reactive. I learn to be with my experience and turn towards it with softness and kindly awareness, at least some of the time. So that's particularly, difficult emotions that I might feel. I notice the stories that come up for me again and again, and just noticing how one's mind works could change those stories. It's no small thing to sometimes set aside mental distractions and pay greater attention to the here and now. In fact, I think it's quite a heroic thing. So finally, my favourite line from the Dhammapada, Buddha's sayings, is, with a quiet mind, come into that empty room, your heart. With a quiet mind, come into that empty room, your heart. A human heart can be filled with much that is heavy, and it seems that we can lighten it and make room in there. Because my main practice at present is letting go and acceptance, and because I love this short poem by Graham Brown. I'll give him the last words. So from Graham Brown, a poem. My open door receives red, yellow, purple, green maple leaves. Thank you.